wanted to say, thanks to everybody for joining the call tonight. My name's Ryan Henry. I'm a former professional player and managing director of Voyager Tennis, and I'll be the host for this evening. In tonight's webinar, we have very special guest Adam Feeney, who will be talking. We'll be having a chat for around 30 minutes, and then opening it up to some questions from people, which you can do in the chat box. And just, I guess, from a webinar etiquette perspective, if you can keep yourself on mute the whole time, that would be really appreciative. So a little bit on Adam's background as a player. So he's ranked 100 in the world in ATP men's doubles. He was 248 in men's singles. He was world number 3 in the junior doubles and number 22 in the world in under 18 singles. He played all 4 Grand Slams, including making the third round of the Australian Open, doubles and second round of Wimbledon. And he's also had some big career wins throughout his time as a player, including Gail Monfils, Sam Querrey, and the infamous Bernard Tomic. And Adam's also been a really pivotal team member of Voyager for the last 9 years. He's had a huge impact on a lot of up-and-coming players. And also coaches as well, and he's currently overseeing and managing a couple of Voyager venues at the moment. So, Feens, well, welcome to the call, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hopefully give you some insight into my career as a player and a coach, and hopefully answer some questions for some people at the end.
Definitely, mate. And Feens and I go a long way back as well. We first competed in the 10 and under country championships. Back quite a long time ago, we obviously travelled on the world junior and senior circuit when we were in the Australian Institute of Sport together, and probably the other thing we have in common as well is that our grandfathers were actually a huge influence on us. We're constantly at tournaments supporting us and at training and that sort of stuff too, mate. So I guess, do you want to tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you got involved in tennis?
Yeah, as Ryan mentioned, my grandfather was a massive part of that. He coached my mother and her 3 sisters, and I'm the youngest of 3 boys. So I basically couldn't wait till it was my time to get on the court. It was in our family, and my grandfather picked us up from school most days and took us down to the tennis courts and had to go from there. And he was probably a big influence in sort of getting me to understand the basics of the game and basically working hard as well. He really sort of pushed us to keep getting better and improve. But I was, I guess, pretty lucky in the sense that I had 2 older brothers that I was always able to play with as well. So I was never the best in the family when I was obviously younger. So constantly having people to look up to and beat me down as well a little bit on the court to make sure I was keep getting better. So that was a big part of my growing up on court. But yeah, then from there just progress as I knew tennis was one of the main things I wanted to do. So my parents were very supportive in sort of allowing me to keep growing in the sport and taking opportunities and develop myself as a player, which involved a lot of sacrifice for them as well. But obviously I'm from the Central Coast originally. So whilst Gosford was a pretty strong club back when I was playing, there wasn't as many training opportunities back on the coast, so I had to travel a lot to Sydney. And then as we got older, obviously travel and lived around Australia and overseas to better my tennis as well.
Yeah, nice, mate. And it sounds like it actually sounds really familiar with the last webinar we did with Fitzy. They're literally having older brothers there to be that, as I said, 2 roles, I guess. One is to be a better player and have lots of good players to hit with, but to keep you in line at times as well, by the sound of it, which is always a key part of it. And do you want to talk through a little bit about what sort of role your parents played and how did they guide and support you?
Yeah, I guess my parents were never the ones to feel like they were the coach. I guess having a grandfather at a younger point where he was heavily influencing my tennis up until I was around about 10. They just let him do the work. They just took me to events, supported me with events and opportunities. As I started getting better, I actually changed coaches and I went to another coach that was really good on the Central Coast, Greg Healy, who produced a lot of really good players. and sort of my tennis went from there. But I guess my parents always just let the coach be the coach, and they gave insight when they saw things. My dad would always sort of in car trips talk about tennis and sort of get my view on how things went, but also give his point of view, but not necessarily in a too negative way. It was just like, this is my point of view and this is what I saw from outside. Not that I always agreed with him, of course, but I guess he wasn't necessarily heavily trying to influence, but this is exactly what he thought, and that's what I had to do. It was just his opinion on it, and we obviously share those opinions with my coaches as well. And then they just kept supporting me throughout my journey. You know, as I got more opportunities and had to travel more. You know, they worked in Sydney, so by the time I was commuting myself, I was commuting down by train and bus to Sydney to train, and they'd pick me up and bring me home late at night. And as I got opportunities to live interstate, again, they supported, or move overseas, they supported me. So definitely needed their support all the time. More from I guess a mental side of things, as well as obviously there's a financial point as well, that they supported me and guided me with their help, but also just people that I could bounce ideas off, and they were always giving honest opinions. You know, if they felt like there wasn't something right in my training or my approach to it, they wouldn't hold back, and they'd let me know that they wanted commitment from me, and their expectation was still quite high, and hopefully I was able to change whatever I was doing and, you know, get on track to get that better. So definitely valued their opinions, but equally they just gave opinions when they felt like there was something really simple that could be fixed. Otherwise, the coach was doing the work.
Yeah, and I think you see that, you know, I guess there's varying parenting styles, you know, out there that have worked successfully. You've got, you know, like your Rob Barty, you know, Ash's dad, you know, the complete hands-off approach and just full trust in the coach. And then you have, you know, so also there's lots of examples of where parents do, you know, they have their opinion. But I think the main thing that I guess from all the research around the optimal sort of tennis parenting styles is that, you know, the parent just provides that unconditional, you know, support and love for the child, and make sure that's sort of at the top of the priority list. And it also is a really healthy thing, I guess, as well, you know, in terms of, sounds like from your parents' point of view, Feeneys, in terms of just setting the expectations around this is the attitude and work ethic and discipline and things like that, which are really healthy parenting styles to have those expectations and let them know. So, but you know, when you're out of line there, as my parents let me know a few times growing up, and I guess, do you want to talk through a typical what a weekly training schedule might look like at different ages? Obviously, being in the country is a little bit different from being in the city, and some of the challenges you had to work through to achieve a good schedule.
Yeah, as I mentioned, when I was quite young, up until about ages 10, 11, I was primarily based on the Central Coast. I probably trained 3 to 4 times a week. Most of it was with my grandfather, or we were able to get another player to come and hit. And then I was able to jump into squads as well. So I'd always do 1-2 squads potentially through the week and do the other sessions with my grandfather. And then probably the key thing was I always played matches. From a young age, I was involved in competitions. So Saturday afternoon comps were more prevalent back then. Inter-district was a really big thing on Sundays. So my weekends were usually jam-packed with competing. I played my first sort of tournament around about 8 or so, and I couldn't wait to get on the court to do that, although it ended up in tears at that point. But obviously that was a learning point, and I grew from there. But as I started getting older, by the time I was sort of 12, I started going down to Sydney more often. By the time I was 14, you know, I was heavily training in Sydney, and I was only training maybe 1 or 2 times on the coast, and most of the week was based down there. But again, I was probably 4 times a week I was on the court with training, and then there was matches constantly. So probably didn't get the training volume to sort of what we suggest sometimes, just with the limitations that I had around where I lived to some degree, but I certainly exceeded probably match time on the court. And then as I got older and like 16, 17, I started getting into Australian shooter sport and different things. Then things changed completely. I was based out of Canberra or based out of Melbourne, and my training schedule was non-stop. A couple of times a day, training for 2-hour blocks, fitness on top of that. So really pushing myself probably 5 to 6 hours a day, and going pretty hard at that point, and really developing the body, and obviously getting time on court. And then, as we pushed professionally, then it became a lot more about trying to find that balance of quality, rest, and making sure then we're pushing yourself at different times. So having schedules with tournaments, so basing it around the tournaments, and really knowing when we're training blocks, we're pushing hard, and then tapering off. So, training up to sort of 20, 24 hours on court, but by the time it was match time, I'd tapered off a lot that week, and I was feeling fresh again. So there's definitely a big learning curve throughout my sort of journey with training volumes, and how to go about it. I think one of the key things I had was matches, though.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like we've done over, it sort of aligns with a lot of the research that we've done, having done over, a couple of 100 case studies now of players' retrospective training histories and match counts. Is that the match volume, I guess, is so critical. It's the strongest determinant of a player's success, and I can certainly speak the same for myself. Probably really similar schedule, 3 to 4 times a week of sort of training. That might have been probably a maximum of 8 hours, but if you're playing almost every weekend and you're competing, you can. I could quite confidently say I was playing between 150, 200 matches a year. Sounds like the same for yourself. And if you're getting that volume up there, it makes all the difference. So I think it's a really key message, I guess, for players and parents as well, that importance of getting out there and playing a lot of matches, playing so many matches that it's just subconscious. You're completely automated when you're out there, and you can just focus on the things that are important.
Yeah, I'd say, just to elaborate a little bit on that, Ryan, I'd say, I wasn't great emotionally on the court when I was younger. It took a long time for me to mature, and I probably lost a lot of matches because emotionally I got upset about things. I guess I always felt like I tried really hard, though, so I'd probably over try sometimes, because I despise losing almost more than I liked winning it sometimes. But I think because I played so much, that I found ways to work things out. I was never the most powerful player. I moved well. I had a bit of craft about how I played, so I had to sort of outthink people a lot. So, if I wasn't getting too upset, I was able to sort of find solutions on the court. But I don't think I would have been that good at that if I hadn't been exposed to that many matches.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess just while we're on that, Feen, so like I know you mentioned that a few times, that like your emotions got better of you, particularly as a young junior. Is there anything that you'd do differently, now, if you were to sort of go, you would go through your junior career again, to try and overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think hopefully I'll try and just relax a little bit more, and not be so stressed about the result of the match. Just sort of trusted myself a bit more. I think probably I didn't allow myself to enjoy the process of competing and the challenge of someone playing well. I got too caught up in the fact that I'll win or lose. And so I think if I could have just trusted myself a little bit more about, that I could play my best tennis, I think I would have played better more often. The second thing is probably I didn't have any clarity with like routines or in between point routines to help, I guess, give myself, structure in what I needed to think. Again, very quickly, my mind would wander to the result as opposed to what I could do to get the next point to be my best point. So I think if I had then I structured my thoughts a little bit clearer, then I think it would have allowed me to potentially play better tennis more often.
Yeah, nice. It's just such a common one we see with the young players that we're working with, is that they can often have a great game, and it can be what's going on between their head that actually wins or loses the matches. So definitely, personally a big fan as well on seeking some of that guidance where needed. If your psychology is costing you matches, it's obviously a really, really important thing to seek guidance in that area. Shifting gears a little bit, Feens, who are the best players that you played against, and why?
I guess I was fortunate when I was a bit younger, playing against some of the junior Grand Slams. Played some really good players. couple of players that stood out that I felt like if they played their best, which I felt like they played really well, I played them. I had no chance. Was Joe Tsonga. I played him a few times in Grand Slams, and Thomas Burditch. I guess they just seemed to have sort of effortless power. They had this ability to sort of hit you off the court and rush you for time. And it felt very hard to rush them. You almost had to come up with incredible stuff. Otherwise, they looked like they're kind of just able to move quite easily, get to the ball comfortably, and feel like they can move the ball around. As I got a bit older, I was able to play some better players in futures and challenges. I played Kevin Anderson, Dimitrov, Baghdadis. Again, a few really good players. And I was able to have some success against some of those players. I felt like I could work out pretty good game plans when I was playing them. But again, they obviously career kicked on much more beyond what mine did. And sort of watching them again as a sort of see that the one thing I kept seeing was they didn't seem to be as rushed. They found ways to take time away. And when I got to practice with some really good players, and someone that stood out to me as I was practicing with them, they were younger at the time, was Tanasi Kokonakis. Before he sort of got a lot of injuries, he was 17 and I was sort of near finishing my career, and I got to practice with him. He just had this innate ability to look like he had tons of time, and I always felt like I was scrambling. I always felt like that's a really clear sign. You look at Federer and these guys, they look like they got tons of time around the ball, and opponents like all over the place. So, I always felt like those kind of guys just had this good ability to make you feel really rushed and uncomfortable.
Yeah, so like a combination, I guess, of the reading of the play, picking up on the patterns really early, which is what Luke talks a bit about, with Federer, as well as that ability to sort of pick up on very subtle parts of the way someone's striking a ball and know whether it's going left or right, and being able to sort of move in that direction really early, which you see some of those top level pros doing exceptionally well. And that ability to bring heat as well, having been on the wrong side of the court of, Tsonga as well, and Burditch. There's nothing pleasant about playing players with that much power. That's for sure. They do make your error count look embarrassing at times for sure. Do you want to go through, I guess, any sort of major adversities or setbacks that you've had in your career, and how did you go about dealing with them?
Yeah, I probably had 3 major sort of injuries when I was playing, and each time I was near the top of my sort of career high in singles. I was nearly 250 each time this happened, and a couple of them maybe could have been avoided. Maybe one of them probably not avoidable, but one of them I hurt my back. I probably wasn't quite doing the right program that I should have been off the court. And so I just didn't have the strength in my glute muscles, basically, and I ended up sort of impinging a nerve in my back. So I was out for like 4 months with that. But it took a long time to sort of find the solution to that one. I had an elbow injury, so I had tendinopathy in my elbow, so golfer's elbow, so the inside. That was definitely avoidable. I think I was too caught up with, at this point I was probably about 23, 24. I was too caught up in trying to actually better my ranking as opposed to look after my body. And I played with that injury for a long time, until the point where I was in America and I basically couldn't hit a forehand or a serve anymore. And I'm like running around trying to hit backhand, and I could barely hit a serve. And it wasn't until that point I thought, yeah, I've got to do something about this. But honestly, I played like 6 months like that. And it was obviously a pretty silly idea, and ended up having to take 9 months off the court. So it took really a big toll on sort of that kind of timeline of my career. And then near the back end of my career, I sort of got myself in really good condition. I was playing some of the best tennis I played, and ran to a drop shot, and my foot got stuck and the other foot kept sliding, and I popped the hamstring nearly off the bone. So it was called a partial thickness tear. So probably unavoidable, that one. But that one was probably the one that hurt the most, because I was in such a good position ranking wise. I had 6 months with nothing to defend, and I was already near my career high, and playing some of the best tennis I'd played. So that one hurt me the most, because I was out for 5 months with that one straight away. So just wiped out all this free time of points that I could have been accumulating at that time, and that was when I felt the best. But I guess probably the big thing for me to take away was, just the importance of looking after the body. making sure that I did what I could to give it rest, make sure I had proper screening of my body. I think that was one thing I had during my time, but I didn't have it frequently enough to keep adjusting to whatever stresses my body was under. And so I'll do that again. Again, obviously, the movement side of things is so important. So if you can't get out there and move properly, it's going to be very difficult to be a high-quality player. So, yeah, if you look at Djokovic, obviously he's taken it to another level again with how well he treats his body and what he puts in it, and how he obviously goes to flexibility. Now it's such a big thing too. So, yeah, I think I'd be doing those things a little bit different.
Yeah, nice. And it is the, probably the most common reason why players, don't ultimately achieve their potential is that, I guess just because you're putting your body through so much physically every day. Majority of people probably wouldn't realize how many injuries they'd get if they trained 3 to 4 hours a day. Tennis, a repetitive sport like tennis. So when you're competing against, really high level top world juniors or professionals, it certainly does highlight any sort of weaknesses in the body. And something we really encourage a lot of our players to do is to go through that physical screening with precision and highlight any areas really early on that players can issues that they can rectify at a young age.
Yeah, I think probably one thing I've really learned is if someone feels an injury, I used to sort of have the mentality to push through it. I always got told you can push through it, and I kind of had that mentality. I don't have that anymore. I feel like if someone's really struggling, if they're honest about it, then it's actually just about getting off the court and treating it, because you don't want it to be something long-term as well. So I definitely have changed my mentality towards the students that I work with, and don't keep pushing through it. Do the right thing by your body. It's telling you to listen by giving you pain. So it's go and rectify that, make it stronger, okay, and get fitter, and then get back on court again.
Yeah. Good advice, mate. Really good. Next question I have for you is who have been some of your most influential coaches that you've had in your career, and why?
Yeah. Probably first one I'll start with would be my grandfather. Just obviously introduced me to tennis, and like I said at the beginning, he really probably set the mentality of working hard and gave some real basic insights to how the game's played, but just really influenced me with the mentality of you had to work hard to be good and successful at the sport. Again, I had a number of good coaches throughout my career, and I was really fortunate to touch base with a lot of different people. From Todd Woodbridge, did a few sessions. Tony Roach did a few sessions. Got to get mentored a little bit by Pat Rafter as well at one point. But probably two things that probably stood out to me, or two coaches that stood out to me when I was about 22. I worked with a coach called Anthony Lane, who was probably the head or one of the head coaches in the Australian Institute of Sport at the time, so like a national academy. He coached many great players before, and one of the big things for me was it wasn't actually about hitting a ball. It was all about the mental side of the game. So, for example, the first week I worked with him, he didn't really say much. He saw me play. I lost, I think, first round to a little French player. I lost 6-4, 6-4, and I used to serve volley a lot. So it was really important that I read where people were returning and where they like to pass. So the first thing he did after that match was he gave me a diary. So this is going to be one of the most important things that you'll ever do. Make sure you really savor it and be really, really conscious of it, and put your best effort into managing this diary. And so it was just a report card, basically. He got me to write down what happened in that match. What were my opponent's strengths, what was his weaknesses, what was his go-to plays when he returned, passing shots, what tactics did I use? And then he's like, you just never know when you play these people again, because if you play him soon, you'll have the ability to write up a really good strategy against this one player. And so fair enough, next week I played him first round again. Very similar conditions. I actually went out and won 6-3, 6-2, I think the next time I played him. So on the court, I was like kind of laughing on the court. My coach was kind of smiling at me. I came off the court and I said that felt like I was cheating. Every time he hit the shot, I knew where he was going. I just started running there. I knew where he was going to pass. I knew where he was returning. And it was just because of that one lesson of writing down what happened previously and learning from that, and then creating my idea behind it. And my coach at the time, Laney, talked about, players are a little bit robotic. They tend to do things and not necessarily know they're doing it. So he said there's a couple of really key, crucial points in the match. He said the first sort of game, everyone's nervous. So the first game or two. So if you get a break point or a 30-year point, basically where that person serves is going to be really important to note that, because that's likely where he's going to serve under pressure. So any big point or first break point I got, I'd really try and take note of where the person served, because I might not know them. And then I'll be trying to sit on that serve and give him the opposite serve to that. So if I was down a tee, I'll wait over there a little bit more, give him out wide, and see if you could hit that serve as well, next break point. Or seeing where they passed as well, trying to sit on that a little bit more. So all of a sudden, it just became my Bible. I wrote in all the time. I ended up having like 2 or 3 of these types of books, and the amount of times I played people was really interesting, and just to actually keep creating these strategies and seeing actually as people evolved, what you got to see was people got better. They got better at their game, so you had to evolve your game plan as well. But it was just really interesting having that. So that was a really big one for me. And then probably the last one was actually Luke. I started working with Luke really late in my career. I'd actually finished playing singles. I was playing more doubles. Wasn't enjoying sort of the game as much at that time. And he said, I knew Luke really well. I actually played a lot with him as a doubles partner when he was playing. And he just came to me and said, I'd love to work with you. I think there's still a lot of upside that you haven't been able to tap into yet. And he said, if you trust me, come have a few sessions and let's just see where this goes. And I did. And I had full faith in him. And one thing I guess I felt like I really worked with Luke, or what Luke really portrayed in me, was just belief. When I was playing, I had a lot of issues with my forehand. I constantly had coaches say, if someone hits fast and deep, you won't be able to get it back. If they serve it there, I'll really struggle with it. So I constantly just had this thing in my head, my forehand was bad, just because of the language that coaches used around me. But Luke had the opposite approach. He said, your forehand's going to be great. We're going to work on it. You're going to feel super confident at it. And that's what happened day in, day out. We worked on the shot, and eventually it became my best shot. I ran around backhands all the time. Although I felt confident in my backhand, my forehand was the shot that was going to hurt people. And we just evolved my game from strictly serve volleying to now looking for forehands and coming to the net when I got short balls. And my strategy became really simple and clear, but I had lots of different ways I could win the point. But it was only because Luke really put in my head my forehand was good. Shots that I thought I could never really make now are my favorite shots. I just look forward to someone hitting a fast deep ball on my toes so I could rip it off my feet. But before I'd avoid that, like the player, I'd be really worried about it. So yeah, that was a really massive influence on me and how positive he was towards the way I played.
So it's probably lucky your opponents weren't making notes on your game, playing you 12 months later. The guy with the weak forehand, 12 months later, it's your best shot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people did do that, obviously. So my old doubles partner, he knew the way I played. I played him in the final of a future. He knew my forehand was, in my mind, poor. So he literally didn't hit me back, and he served 100% of serves to my forehand, and it was going okay until something clicked in my head and it was no good. And then I lost 5-1. So it was just he broke me down mentally because he knew I had an issue with it mentally. It wasn't that I was actually hitting that poorly, but it was just eventually, it was he was just saying, I know your forehand's bad. So I just kept going. But I know deep down, yeah, he's probably thinking, I know deep down you believe it, Feens, Yeah, exactly. So, he broke it down that day, but yeah. So again, the good example of knowing about someone a bit more detail.
Yeah. No, really good stuff there, mate. Awesome. And in terms of obviously you playing against, you played against a lot of the best, juniors in the world and some of the best seniors in the world. What were some of the, I guess, common characteristics that you saw amongst those players?
Yeah, I got to sort of be around obviously really good players, lots of great players from Australia. I got to train with Leighton Hewitt for a couple of weeks when he was number 1 in the world, which was awesome. And just seeing the way he went about and approached the game and the intensity he had, the way he worked. One probably thing that stood out to me, I went to Sanchez Casal Academy as part of the AIS when I was 19, and we lived over there for 3 months. And when I went over there, I was 340 in the world. think Andy Murray was 341. We were literally like one spot difference. I think I remember being in front because I thought, well, better than this guy. I'll beat this guy. But at that time, he was nothing like we see him now. You know, I thought he was quite lazy. He barely trained. The coach there, that he was getting coached by Pato. He world famous, had coached so many top 10 players, like ridiculous. But I remember him saying, overhearing conversation between my coach and him, and when I had a talk one time, he's like, this Andy guy, he will never be top 100 player. You know, he's got the worst work ethic. He doesn't want to play. You know, he doesn't respect the game and all this kind of stuff. And so that was like middle of the year. The week later, they split as a coaching and player unit. And by the end of that year, Andy Murray was top 100. The thing that changed was, you know, he just got on court and he worked hard. You know, every time I saw him from then on, I don't think I saw a person work harder than he had. You know, off the court, on the court, wherever it was, he was just working hard. He obviously had tremendous talent. He obviously had a lot of volume behind him when he was younger. So a lot of time had been put into him and his skills. But, you know, until he actually pieced it together with that intensity and that day in, day out work ethic, I agree with Pato. He probably wasn't going anywhere at that point. You know, he didn't show anything to do that. But when he really changed that mindset, you know, obviously world became his oyster, and obviously became one of the best players in the world. And that has been a common thing I've seen. I've been around Alexander Zverev. His brother played alongside him a lot. And so Alex was really young when I was traveling and playing against his brother. Just saw him. He was just constant court, like off the court, working hard as well. Like, just as one common thing, if you're going to be successful, be prepared to work hard in the game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And did you obviously there was it sounded like there might have been a personality clash, player coach, you know, with Murray and his coach. If he turned it around a lot, do you think that might have been the case? And do you know who he actually went with when he changed and started working hard?
Yeah, he actually went back to England. I can't remember who he was working directly under, to tell you the truth. I think it was through the federation. He had a coach, but I couldn't tell you the name of him. But yeah, I definitely think there was a disconnect between the way Pato coached and Andy as a player took information. There was definitely a disconnect there, and yeah, you could see that sort of broke down pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, really interesting, and obviously something happened, and Andy's motivation changed. You often see that. You can see great coaches and great players, but sometimes the personality, and we often see that with even, you know, players who are looking for coaches. Sometimes you can pick a great coach, but the personality mismatch sometimes doesn't work, and you need to find someone. I think it's a good message also for players and parents looking to find the right person, that, you know, find someone that's good, but also find someone that kind of gels as well. I think it's sometimes it's one of the best ways to get the most out of a player, is establishing that really good connection too. So just a quick one for any parents or players who are in the audience. If you want to ask any questions, you can into the chat box. We are going to we've got about just over 10 minutes left. And if not, I've got a couple more questions for you, Feeneys. The next question I've got for you. So if you looked back on your career as a player, what would you say were the main things you got out of the game?
Yeah, I'd say obviously I learned a lot about myself, and characteristics I sort of able to build from the game. Got to work hard and sort of find discipline within the game, and I thought that teaches me a lot off the court as well. Obviously got to travel and see a lot of the world, albeit that's probably one thing I would change. I got to see the world, airports, tennis courts and restaurants, but not necessarily the good things about certain countries. So I'll try and actually take a little bit more time to go and enjoy where I was, if I was to do it again, and really enjoy that journey of it. But again, I think, you know, meeting so many people, a lot of doors opened up for me by going around and just being, you know, I think being an Aussie as well. I think first of all overseas, in groups of Australians traveling for tennis, I think it's not a bad thing. You get treated quite well everywhere you go. So as long as you're respectful to all those people that you're with and their country, then I think you get good opportunities from it. But yeah, to me, I just met tons of great people, and and then got to learn a lot about myself and actually develop myself, not only on the court, but off the court as well. So hopefully being a pretty good person.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And like, obviously, when you stop playing tennis professionally, you know, like a lot of players, you sort of reassess what you're doing. You could have moved into obviously a lot of different areas, different careers, studied again, all that. I mean, what made you choose tennis as a career, and yeah, what do you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I guess early on when I was playing, when I was really young, I thought I wanted to be a professional tennis player. That was always in my mind, and that was the number one thing that was driving me every time I was stepping near a court. I guess as I was getting older, I still felt like I really enjoyed the sport, and I knew I was potentially going to stop. I still felt like I had a lot to give the sport and I had a lot of passion for it. And I guess I felt like I learned a lot in my journey that I could help pass on to students. And I enjoy being around kids and adults of all different standards and seeing the way the game can be played and enjoyed. So, you know, for me, it wasn't always about just having to get on and go performance. I actually just wanted to see people enjoy the sport as much as what I enjoyed it. That's why when I started, I liked doing a whole range of different classes, and I still do. But you know, as I start to sort of do more performance-based stuff, I really see and feel great joy of seeing someone improve and seeing lots of different skills being built. I like getting on the court and teaching people how to slice and volley and do these sort of more specialized things, and seeing them evolve their game and really see, you know, how they can improve as a player. But yeah, to me, I felt like I just had a lot to give still to sport, and I felt like I could really pass on some key things that could make people really enjoy the game, you know, as much as I did, but really develop in the game too.
Yeah, great, mate. And obviously it's certainly reflected in how appreciative, you know, and the impact you're sort of having on a lot of the clients and a lot of the players that you're coaching, and also the coaching team as well. You know, so obviously having a background like you've had and being able to impart that knowledge and experience is certainly, you know, super impactful and it certainly has a big impact on everyone, mate. So got a couple of questions coming in. I'll do them in order until we run out of time there. So Anshul has asked the question: at what age is it important to start off-court training and focusing on the diet?
I would say off-court training, I didn't start it. I don't really recall doing a lot of it, to tell you the truth, until I was like specifically probably 14. Before that, I did a lot of sports. I played soccer a lot, did a little athletics. I did a lot of other things besides tennis as a young kid, which might have been why I didn't play as much training-wise. But I definitely played a lot of other things, which I think was helping my fitness, but also helping me gain coordination and developing different skills that would translate to tennis later on. So I'm a big believer that, you know, to play different sports, you can gain a lot of helpful things for tennis, especially team sports as well. I think that can be more enjoyable, which tennis doesn't always give you that teammate all the time. So it can take that little bit of pressure off sometimes and be enjoyable. But yeah, I remember specifically at 14, things didn't go my way in a nationals event, and I thought something had to change. And I really pushed myself to actually get better fitness-wise, and I started doing on my own back. I thought, no, I can push myself harder. So I started doing a lot of off-court training then, and by the end of that year, I won back-to-back national titles. And I believe it was just through getting what I did off the court and that mental toughness that I developed off the court, as well as fitness. Dietary habits, I probably went through different stages, but again, not too heavily influenced when I was young. To tell you the truth, it wasn't until I was older and, you know, I needed to look at recovery better. I had a lot of issues with cramping, so I look at my hydration intake and go those sort of things. But I didn't look at it that much when I was younger. Just had a pretty balanced diet, I would say. I still had junk, but I also still, you know, my parents cooked me good food as well. That helped me just maintain long-term energy.
Nice, good answer, mate. And a lot of the research backs up that, you know, physical training becomes hugely impactful from around those sort of early teenage years onwards. You can really start to influence your physical characteristics. Obviously, prehabilitation, you know, stuff can be really good at a young age. You know, those who get screenings and have have advice around, you know, which areas to work on. But yeah, it certainly matches up. I think Nadal was very similar around that sort of, you know, early teenage years is when he started a lot of his heavy physical training, and that it completely makes sense. We'll go into the next.
One thing I would probably add would be to get like your ability to understand and do some prehab stuff. If your body has little areas of weakness at a younger age, say 10, if you start to develop better habits then, and you can actually, then the bigger your base and the better your stronger base is, then I think the better athlete you'll become. So I know I was sitting on a webinar that Alexander Zverev's trainer had done. I can't remember his name right now, but he talked about Alex having, from about age of 10, doing a pretty good prehab sort of program, which he just got great body control. And that's ultimately what he was looking for as a trainer. Wasn't developing strength, it was understanding his body really well and understanding how to actually mechanically move it the right way. So later on, he wasn't going to hopefully get the injuries that were maybe going to stop him from progressing his career. So that would be probably one thing I'd look at maybe, but I wouldn't be heavily training or anything too much off the court.
Yep. Yeah, no, good stuff, mate. The next question I've got from Julie is, with tennis being, I guess it's like an individual sport. There's lots of team sports like soccer and cricket where you're part of that team atmosphere. How do you go with sort of traveling alone?
Yeah, it's tough. I tried to avoid it. Traveling, I probably in my career only went to 2 or 3 tournaments by myself. Whenever I was setting schedules, I'll be doing it with someone similar ranking or a double partner or someone I knew from overseas. So I'll be in touch with them. So yeah, I rarely did travel on my own because I didn't enjoy that at all, especially in a foreign country that was different language. I really tried to avoid that. And so to me, some of my best memories and times were when we had like 7 or 8 Australians traveling, and you know, we really had great fun, as well as, you know, we all got in, we worked hard, we constantly had, you know, people to practice with, we supported each other, even though we weren't a team, we were over there together to help each other. If one of us wasn't winning, we wanted the other Aussie to win. So I'd really encourage those kind of things when you could, if you weren't part of teams, traveling together. But again, especially once you're getting to that stage where you're traveling overseas or interstate.
Yeah, nice, mate. And the last question we've got here from Osman, which is, at what age should a coach start incorporating like Dave Bailey's style of, you know, footwork training into kids' practice?
Yeah, I think if they're starting to move a full court, so I would say, you know, maybe when you get to yellow ball, probably I wouldn't be doing too much before that. Hopefully the coach that you're with is going to be starting to teach the basics of footwork and not having to go too extreme with doing extra stuff on top of that. But I think as you're starting to move more in a full court sort of situation and cover the court more, then I think those things become more beneficial. Obviously movement is such a key part, so moving efficiently is going to be a real essential part to becoming a good mover. So obviously developing good habits at a younger age is good. Hopefully the coach will be helping you do that. I think, you know, by the time you're sort of 10, 11, you can do some of those things, and that can definitely help contribute to developing good habits.
For sure, mate. And the last, William has a question. He really liked your tennis diary, so he's asked to repeat it. But I was going to say, Will, what we're going to do is we'll put it upload it onto YouTube, so you can watch the whole the webinar again. But yeah, certainly love that example as well, Feeneys, of the importance of writing your sort of notes down after every match you play. Certainly a really key one. So that brings us to the end of the webinar there, guys. So I guess a couple of key takeaways that I got out of it. First of all, I guess, you know, right at the very start, you talked about the importance of match volume, and where you weren't able to potentially get as many training hours, but you'd certainly made up for that with playing a really, really high volume of matches, which would have had a huge impact on your game. Looking after the body, so the importance of getting a physical screening and really listening to your body when you're injured. A lot of players will play through injuries and play through pain, where the reality is that, you know, you've got to listen to it. and Feeneys had some really good examples there. The importance of the work ethic. So I thought that was a really good story about Andy Murray there, and a lot of other players that Adam was referring to in terms of the work ethic is the key to success there. And then I think that the thing that Will was requesting there was just around that player diary. I think is an awesome tip for players, because the reality is that everybody always plays against the same players all the time. And it's something where you can obviously get a really really good advantage against your opponents. So once again, Feeneys, thanks so much for your time tonight, mate. I'm sure everybody would have really enjoyed that, and really appreciate it, mate.